reply to the Israeli assault on Gaza right now.
All right, let's watch Josh
I'm hoping that
Mearsheimer.
we can cover the view that you're known for, or at least one of the views, offensive realism, and the larger or more general concept of rationality, the Israeli lobby in American politics and policymaking.
Did I love it? I loved it. It's
What
good.
a morally responsible international order could look like, or does look like. So perhaps start off with this view of offensive realism. Could you, for those who may not be familiar with it, explain what that is and how it might be manifested right now in Israel's assault on Gaza?
Well, I'm
would not
not
be able to do
sure
that.
that Israel's assault on Gaza has
Not that
much
good.
to do with realism. But I'll give you first a take on what my take on what realism is, and then I can talk about the Israeli assault on Gaza. Realism is a theory of international politics that privileges power. It says power is the currency of international relations, and states are mainly concerned, not exclusively, but mainly concerned about the balance of power, and they want to maximize the amount of power they have. The best situation is to be a hegemon in the system. Now, why is that the case? The argument that I make is that if a state operates in a world where there's no higher authority that can rescue it if it gets in trouble, and one can never know what the intentions of another state are today, and certainly cannot know what their intentions will be in the future, and that rival state may be very powerful. In that world, you want to make sure you are much more powerful than all of your rivals. Because again, if it turns out that the intentions of another state are malign, and that state is really powerful, and you get into trouble, there's no higher authority you can turn to. So in a world like that, it makes eminently good sense to be as powerful as possible. Indeed, to be the hegemon in
We
the
should try to build that higher authority, chat.
system. But of course,
And that's what the United States is trying to block. That's why the United States hates the ICC, because the ICC might hold the United States accountable for its violations of human morality.
all states understand that basic logic, and the end result is that you get a competition for power. I call that security competition. And sometimes that security competition results in war. So that's the basic argument that I lay out. And as you can tell from listening to me talk, it's really a structural argument. It's the structure of the international system. It's the fact that there is no higher authority. States cannot know each other's intentions, and some states are much more powerful than others. That drives states to compete for power. So that's the basic realist theory. Now, the reason it doesn't apply to the Israeli-Palestinian case is we're not talking about rival states. We're talking about one state, which is Greater Israel, and we're talking about the fact that inside of Greater Israel, the Palestinians in Gaza are revolting against the Israelis. This is basically a prison break. What happened was that the Israelis, in effect, locked the Palestinians in Gaza up in a giant open-air prison, and they treated them horribly. And what happened on October 7th is you had a prison break, and the Israelis reacted to that by invading Gaza. But this is not a competition between two states. If we had long ago gotten a two-state solution and there was a Palestinian state side by side with an Israeli state, then realist logic would apply because you'd have two states competing with each other. But the Israelis had no interest in creating a Palestinian state, so you have a Greater Israel. And what you have here is basically a rebellion by these prisoners who are locked up in Gaza.
And you've also talked about rationality, states acting rationally or irrationally. And I'm wondering if we were to apply it to the case of Israel, whether it'd be safe to say that they're acting irrationally because something you observed recently, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Israel is trying to defeat Hamas, but it will never be able to do so. So how in that sense is that in Israel's interest to keep waging this war?
Well, it is in Israel's interest to defeat Hamas. Whether you think it's morally correct or politically correct is another matter. I mean, I believe that the Israelis should have long ago given the Palestinians a state of their own. That was the smart thing to do. But they've decided not to do that. Now, there's no question that the Israelis went into Gaza and they argued that what they wanted to do was defeat Hamas. And given that it is virtually impossible to defeat Hamas in combat, in other words, for the Israeli Defense Forces to engage Hamas and eliminate them, it's virtually impossible. One could argue that's irrational, but I don't believe that was Israel's goal. I mean, they said that was their goal. Their ultimate goal, I believe, from the beginning was to ethnically cleanse Gaza, to drive the Palestinians out of Gaza. And by the way...
Correct. Israel wants to annex the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. That's the ultimate goal. And it's very highly rational from that perspective. Think about 100 years from now. Assume the Israelis get away with their crime. And they do ethnically cleanse Gaza and the West Bank. And they do their genocide. That's what the Israeli right is thinking about.
If they had done that, then they would have eliminated Hamas as a problem in Gaza. Do you follow what I'm saying here? So one could argue that the decision to try to drive Hamas out of Gaza and the Palestinians in toto out of Gaza was morally wrong. But one could say it was a rational strategy from Israel's point of view. Now you're saying to yourself, why would I say that?
That's not to say good. I need you to stop using your emotions and start thinking cold-bloodedly. He's not saying that it's good. He's saying that it's rational, meaning it achieves the end that Israel set out to achieve, which is to annex the territory and to end the resistance to their rule. He's not saying it's good.
Israel, Greater Israel, is today an apartheid state. And for purposes of the future, it's not clear that Israel can maintain itself over the long term as an apartheid state, because an apartheid state is such a repugnant notion to huge numbers of people in the West. And the Israelis worry that someday they will go the way of South Africa, which of course was an apartheid state and is no more, at least as an apartheid state. So what the Israelis would like to do is they'd like to ethnically cleanse Gaza and ethnically cleanse the West Bank, so that you have a Greater Israel that's filled mainly with Israeli Jews and almost all of the Palestinians are gone. That's their ideal. Mm-hmm. And I think they saw what happened on October 7th as an opportunity to cleanse, to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And that's what they set out to do. And I think that was a rational strategy, even though I want to make it clear, I think it was an abhorrent strategy from a moral point of view. But it failed. And the end result is they not only did not drive the Palestinians out of Gaza, thankfully, in my opinion, but they also have not defeated Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Do you think that Israel's seeming lack of concern of the international community trying to stop what they're doing and the likelihood that they'll become a pariah state if they don't is irrational, and how seriously they take that? Because if they do get, this way, hypothetically, where they take Gaza and they do what they want with it, would it not just further alienate them from everyone else? And what kind of winning position?
The problem in your argument is the use of the word everyone else.
Right.
For the Israelis, what really matters is what the United States does. But not only the United States, countries like Canada and countries in Europe. And the fact is, the Israelis can do almost anything to the Palestinians, and the Americans, the Canadians, and the Europeans, especially the West Europeans, will stand by them. We see this even with the Germans today, who you would think, given their experience with genocide, would be opposing what the Israelis are doing in Gaza. But the Germans are standing by the Israelis, as are the Americans, and pretty much everybody else in the West. So the Israelis think they have a free hand here. But of course, in almost all other places on the planet, they are in deep trouble because people...
And this is the crisis. This is the crisis. Thank you, Eric Dured. Thank you for the resub. This is the crisis that Israel faces, is that the rest of the world is rising in power. Latin America, China. And so Israel is trying to create a world system that will tolerate their ethnic cleansing. And so they are going to tolerate other ethnic cleansing. They're going to tolerate ethnic cleansing in Azerbaijan or in Turkmenistan or Congo or India. It's all going to be okay for Israel.
In those other places understand that the Israelis are executing a genocide, and they think that this is unacceptable.
Right. So perhaps what I was trying to get at is that could a state like Israel survive this way long term if it just has the help of, say, a handful of powerful states long term? Is this in any state's interest?
Well, I think there are good reasons to think that an apartheid state cannot last over the long term. And as I said before, I think the Israelis themselves understand that. This is not a good situation. And we now have a situation where you're not only dealing with an apartheid state, Israel, but you're dealing with an apartheid state that is in the process of executing a genocide in Gaza. And that is going to be a moral stain on Israel's reputation. I'm tempted to say for the foreseeable future, but one could say forever. This is a disastrous situation for Israel. The Israelis tend to think they can get away with it now because Western elites are backing them pretty much to the hilt.
Yeah.
But with the passage of time, when people take stock of what happened after October 7th and what the Israelis are now doing, it will, I believe, be disastrous for Israel's reputation. So you marry the genocidal behavior with the fact that it's an apartheid state, and Israel's future does not look promising.
And to your point about Israel getting help from Americans, I presume that would also include the Israeli lobby, or some segments of the Israeli lobby, and you're known for your seminal book on the Israeli lobby. I'm just wondering how you've seen the Israeli lobby develop with respect to American policy since you wrote that book, and how it's facilitating the ongoing assault or genocide.
Highly recommend the Israeli lobby. Blackfish Tully, thank you for the 39 months.
Gaza right now.
Well, there's no question that the Israel lobby is playing a key role and keeping the West on Israel's side.
And that the sort of imperial pattern which reflects within this explicit example is deeply contingent with America's strategy of privacy globally. Mearsheimer is still doing the work of attempting to disarticulate the American position from the global stakes at play. I don't think he's doing that. I don't think he's doing that. In fact, I think if you talk about it from the point of view of what does Israel, I think Mearsheimer would say the tail is wagging the dog. That Israel used to serve a very important function for the United States during the Cold War. But now the institutions that cemented Israel's connection to the United States have now started to flow the other way. It's like having a sewer pipe that gets backed up. And now the level of sewage is so high, it's starting to flow back up the pipe. That's probably what he would say.
No doubt about that. We wrote the article, Steve Walt and I, about the Israel lobby in 2006, and then we wrote the book in 2007. So that was quite a while ago. a good 18 years for the article. I think there's no question that we have had a profound effect as a result of the article and the book on the discourse about Israel. I think we opened up a big discussion or a widespread discussion on the Israel lobby, the U.S.-Israeli relationship, and on Israeli policy itself. But I think we have had zero effect on actual policy, right? So again, we've influenced the discourse for sure, but in terms of actual policy, zero influence. And I think that tells you two things. One is the lobby is incredibly powerful. And number two, I would argue that the lobby has become more powerful with the passage of time. I think what's happened here is that it has become increasingly difficult to defend Israel in public discourse in the West.
I mean, nobody even tries. Nobody even tries. If you try to criticize Biden, everybody, the only thing you're ever going to see is would Trump be better? Would Trump be better? Would Trump be better? Would Trump be better? Well, congratulations. You polarized me into not caring. I said lesser of two evils. Look at the utter depravity of the United States under Biden. And Trump is better? You are our strongest soldier. There is nobody forcing Biden to threaten to cut off the World Food Program if Palestine gets a state. So congratulations. I don't care about Joe Biden or Trump. You've succeeded. Good job.
I think Israeli behavior is so outrageous on occasion that the lobby has to work overtime to defend Israel. And I think it's fair to say that the lobby has risen to the occasion.
They really have.
It's, gotten stronger with the passage of time, and it does an amazing job of protecting Israel.
It really does.
I want to be clear here. I do not think this is in the American national interest, and I don't think it's in Israel's interest as well. I think.
By the way, chat, I couldn't agree more.
The lobby, in effect, has helped lead Israel down the primrose path. So I want to be very clear on that. I don't think the lobby is good for either the United States or for Israel. But nevertheless, it is very powerful. But there's one other aspect of the lobby that we should talk about that's important to understand. Lobbies or interest groups, and there are many of them in the United States, are most effectively when they can work behind closed doors and they can work in very subtle ways. And people are not talking about the influence of this lobby or that lobby, whether it's the National Rifle Association, the Cuba lobby, or the Israel lobby. But what's happened over time, and I think that we've played a key role here in bringing the lobby's actions out into the open, is that the lobby now has to engage in smash-mouth politics. It has to operate out in the open in brazen ways. And therefore, more and more people have become aware of the Israel lobby's presence in the American body politic, and they've become more aware of how the lobby works. And this is not good for the lobby, and it's not good for Israel. And this is another reason why, when you think about sort of where Israel will be and where the lobby will be moving forward, it's hard to tell a positive story. It looks like there's big trouble ahead for Israel and big trouble ahead for the lobby.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because when I was reading the article in the book, it seemed that at some point that the lobby was successful in working this way that you're talking about behind closed doors, versus now it just seems like everyone knows that it's there and it's influencing politicians and policy. Do you see this as being a vulnerability for it now, and it's in a position where it can actually be weakened on account of it?
Well, it's a vulnerability because it makes it difficult to tell the story that the United States supports Israel because it's in America's strategic interest and because it is the morally correct thing to do.
Yes.
What the lobby like to do, and likes to do, is make the argument that Americans support Israel down the line because it's in our interest. We're birds of a feather, right? We're supporting our ally. Israel is the only democracy in the...
When somebody says Israel shares our values, I agree. I think Israel does share the values of America, which is racism, ethnic cleansing, genocidal war. I do agree that Israel does share our values, and that's the problem.
Middle East. It shares our values. This is the argument that it's morally and strategically correct to support Israel. And what we said in the article and in the book is that that's not true. Strategically, Israel is basically an albatross around America's neck. And the argument that it's ethically correct to support Israel against the Palestinians has been wrong for a long, long time, well before October 7th. And the real reason that we support Israel is because of the lobby, not because of strategic or moral logic. And once the lobby is out in the open and you see the lobby wielding its influence in sort of very heavy-handed ways, that works to undermine the argument that Israel and the United States are close together for strategic and moral reasons, because you wouldn't need a lobby if there were strategic and moral reasons for a close relationship. The reason you need a lobby is because Israel is not a strategic asset. It's a strategic liability, and its behavior towards the Palestinians is morally reprehensible. And I want to be clear, it has been for a long period of time. This is not something that started on October 7th. So to deal with this situation, you need a lobby. But it's, again, best if that lobby is in the background. And it is not any longer in the background. I want to make one other point on this, Paul. It's very important to understand that the coming of social media has changed the game in very important ways. It was much easier to work in the background, and it was much easier to sort of cover up what Israel was doing before the coming of social media. With social media now, there are just all sorts of videos on the internet of what the Israelis are doing in Gaza. There are all sorts of alternative platforms for critics of Israel to speak on regarding the war in Gaza. Yes, the mainstream media continues to support Israel down the line, but the fact is that there are alternative platforms where people can go and criticize Israel.
And this is exactly what this stream provides you, chat, because without platforms like mine and Hassan's and TikTok, there would just be the propaganda that you're getting from MSNBC, where they didn't even talk about the indictment. Like, it's actually batshit crazy, because if MSNBC knows they can't spin that, so you know what they do? They just don't even talk about it. They don't even talk about it.